shared as well.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Thanks very much. Thank you. James Daly.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to ask your opinion, because this can only be an educated guess in respect of this, but on the basis that I would quite clearly say that spiking, we'll come on to the definition of what type of criminal offence it is, but let's just say that spiking, we accept as a criminal offence. Would you say that this is so widespread, because I come from the point of view with Mr MacDonald of naivety in respect to this, and I must apologise to the panel for that, but we are talking about probably the most widespread criminal repeated acts at this moment in time in this country. So on Saturday coming, if we were to have a table of the criminal offences throughout the country that were being committed, this would almost certainly be at the top of that table. Do you think that's a correct viewpoint? To Dawn or Helena?
Yes, I think it's definitely a correct view.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we start off by that highlights the significance of this committee's investigation into this, because we are talking about the most significant and repeated criminal offending in the country, basically, in respect of this. Now, I thought that what Mr Lawton was saying to you was a very interesting point, and I think that this is probably what you were campaigning for, Dawn, is I've just been looking through the Offences Against the Person Act 1861, and I've been trying to find a criminal offence that spiking, that the actual act, if nothing else happens, that when you put whatever it is in a glass or whatever, what criminal offence is actually committed. If you are injected, this is quite clearly an assault of some kind, and there are perhaps other offences. So if you have witness evidence that somebody sees the injection going in, if there's something, you may be able to get an assault conviction in respect of that. But if it is putting something into a drink, you've been doing this for a long time, Dawn. Tell me what criminal offence that falls under.
That's exactly what we need to sort out today. Well, on this inquiry, because at the end of the day, putting something untoward into someone's drink is a criminal offence, and you can receive up to 10 years in prison for that offence. But it all depends on what criminal activity has happened.
Sorry, do you mind if I just take a step back on the story? When you say putting something into somebody's drink is a criminal offence, what criminal offence are we talking about for that?
Well, drink spiking it can hold up to a sentence of 10 years, but it has to have another crime associated with it. So I think that now... I think just to clarify that, and this is the point that I think is really, really important in terms of this. Yeah.
I don't think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that somebody puts something into somebody's glass, that is not, it potentially is an assault or something else like that, but it is not a criminal offence on its own merits, is it? I think it's got to be related to another offence.
Yes,
it's an aggravating factor of another offence, effectively.
Yeah.
So when you were quite rightly saying about the most serious sexual offences, it's an aggravating factor if somebody's drugged. A victim in that is drugged, that will be reflected in the sentence. What we're talking about here, as part of this investigation, is finding a way for the criminal law to penalise people for I'm not saying the simple act of spiking, but spiking on its own where there's no other consequence.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we're going to have to speak to other witnesses who, and I think that your evidence, all three of your evidence in respect to that, is incredibly helpful. And I think that when Mr Lawton was asking in respect to the prosecution, that's one of the problems, isn't it?
Yes.
In that the police probably don't know what to charge people with if they come. And I think, Dawn, you made a very perceptive point, and this is nobody's fault, that if the drug is going to be out of somebody's system after potentially 6 hours, that means that the forensic medical evidence is not there. And therefore, what is the evidence that the police can rely on? There are challenges in terms of the investigation, and we need to find ways, I think, in this, or suggestions, or to find ways as to assist the police, to assist victims, to see how these things can be investigated in a way which is sympathetic, thorough, and can lead to outcomes. Because all three witnesses that we've heard from today have had the most horrific assaults carried out on them, and nothing is happening. And just as it seems to be a societal acceptance that, well, just, this is what happens, this is it. And I think it's really good and strong evidence, and I think that obviously the university are doing good work. But we have to take a stronger response than it's very important about education, it's very important about putting things on the top of bottles, but we have to have a criminal justice outcome, don't we? That people know, it's all right telling people this is not this, you shouldn't be doing this, but I want people to know that if they're doing this, they may well be going to prison. Am I unreasonable, do you think, Julie, in that?
I don't think you're unreasonable. I think, as you say, I think it's incredibly difficult because for us, it's being spiked with alcohol.
Yeah.
So, there isn't, our data is it's actually not drugs that students are being spiked with. It's possibly levels of alcohol. And how do you prove that? How do you prove somebody has been spiked with a level of alcohol for what they've chosen not to drink?
Sorry, but was that just one case, though?
No, out of all our data, we've had one positive drugs and the rest,
So how many alcohol, out of interest?
Well, the people who've come to us, we're doing drug testing. So we're saying of the 32 we've tested, 31 are negative for drugs. So maybe 31 are positive for levels of alcohol.
But not spiked with alcohol because they're drinking alcohol?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Can I just ask, in terms of, I'm sorry for giving more of a speech than a question, but just in terms of those general points I'm trying to flesh out, Helen, what do you think in respect to some of those things?
Well, the reason why spiking is so prevalent is because the perpetrators know that there are no ramifications at the moment. That is the bottom line of what we've got to address and what this inquiry has to do something about.
So in terms of the criminal justice side of this, in terms of the police, can you give us some direction as to what you think, how you think we're going to have police officers, I'm sure, and law officers. Do you have any ideas about how we can suggest to them that they can improve things in respect of how these matters are investigated?
Well, I think if we are going to address drink spiking, I think it has to be four-pronged, and that is that A&E and GPs take it seriously and ensure that the evidence is collated and collected quickly, that the police do the same, but again it's taken seriously, that they also have the equipment on site, and I know that's what's happening in Bristol with this pilot campaign, so there will be widely available urine testing kits and drink spiking testing kits, so we can gather the evidence, keep the drink, because without that evidence, again, the prosecutions can't happen. So the police, A&E and any frontline services, and we mustn't forget actually the voluntary sector, because people like Street Angels and do Safe Space and Street Passers do a wonderful job. So also empowering them to collect evidence would also be very, very helpful. Then an awareness campaign that also tries to change the mindset of potential spikers within, as I say, that sort of 16 to 18-year-old age group before they head off into the legal nighttime economy or off to college, leaving the safety of home and their trusted friends, I think is absolutely key. And then, of course, a responsibility and a burden on the venues themselves to collect data, have well-trained staff, CCTV footage, and some of course do that well through Best Bar None and Pub Watch, and it's often the smaller, less regulated venues that we really have to try and address in some way as well.
What do you think, Don? Have you got anything, Don, you can add to that in respect of...
Yeah, I think what you've just said, Helen, is perfect. And also the voluntary sector. I mean, we've got the NHS walk-in centres. Why are we not utilising some of these... The things that are already in place, because we know that we need to get those bloods taken. I mean, but it comes down, obviously, it always comes down to money.
Resources,
and resources, and it's very expensive.
At the start of this, Don, I think you said you were campaigning, I may have misunderstood, but are you campaigning for an offence called spiking? Is
yes.
that what the campaign is?
So it has its own specific offence code. So then if we go to Greater Manchester, if we go to the Mayor of London and we say how many drink spiking incidents have happened, we can get the correct data. The data that you've supplied today has been fantastic, but trying to collect that data for me to go through to present to the police and crime commissioners, for example.
If we could just ignore the data for a second, it's a very important point you're raising, but what I'm trying to say is that this whole thing needs an end point. And the end point is that for people who, education and everything else like that, that you are going to get charged if you do this.
Yes.
And that's what you're effectively asking Parliament to look at and say that on its merits, that if somebody spikes somebody without their consent, there should be a specific offence. We understand the difficulties in terms of investigation, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the offence on the statute book.
Perfect.
That's what you're asking.
That's exactly what I'm asking. And also that alcohol is a drug. So that is included. You should also be able to get a prosecution if somebody is putting extra alcohol in somebody's drink without their consent.
Okay, I think, James, it may be helpful for the committee to perhaps get some information, advice from academics about how you could introduce a specific offence around this area. I don't know if the Law Commission have looked at this, but I think we certainly as a committee will want to investigate further, I think, about this specific offence and how that is possible to do, if it's possible to do.
Mind if I just ask one more question?
Yes, if you ask one more question, and then I think we've got Prime Minister's question time coming up. So,
apart from all the serious things we discussed, one of the most alarming things to me is that we have the reason why I asked the question about the prevalence of this, which means that we have a lot of people wandering around who think it's all right to spike people. As a societal, that's what we do. We go out and we do this. Now, just finally to you, Julie, I know we haven't got time in respect to this. Is that the case? You've got a whole raft of young people coming into, from your experience, who think that this is just a bit of a laugh and that this is what you do on a Saturday night. Is that the experiences that you're being fed back to you? That this is...
It's not the experiences we're being fed back to us. It's the experience. Actually, I was listening to Zara earlier. Actually, and as a student, that's what she's saying. I think for us is we are seeing this spiking happening at house parties. Therefore, that indicates it's with their housemates. And so for us, we don't feel particularly some of it is malicious and it's probably for a laugh. So we have to look at what consequences we can do about that, don't we? And I think then if we can move forward with actually it becomes a crime, it's easier then for universities to say, well, actually, if you do this and you think it's funny, this may be the consequences of it.
I should mention there is outrage too amongst a huge number of young adults. I think the tide is changing against that. It happens, doesn't it?
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you, Jim.
thank you.